Good morning and welcome to the Red Net Show, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon, even if that morning never ends. This has been, I think, a week for both of us this week. We were talking about off mic just a little bit before we went live, but we are here with everything else that's going on, and we've got some news to cover up for you today, and I think I just botched our entire intro here, and I can't even figure out where I'm coming from at this point here. How was your weekend?
Weekend was good, busy.
Yeah,
I feel like I need another weekend to recover from my weekend.
Oh, don't you just love those ones? I told you a little bit before we went live, I told my morning audience today, I can't read a wedding invitation apparently.
At least it's not your own wedding invitation.
Well, hey, that might be coming in the near future than we might think here. I'll tell you a little bit after the show, what's going on with that. But anyway, yeah, no, my mom and dad live like 3 hours away from here, and my niece lives up in that same area. Actually, her boyfriend, soon-to-be husband, works for my brother-in-law. That's how small of a town that it is up there. So I went up there because I thought the wedding was this past Saturday. I thought for sure the invitation said the 12th, and okay, I don't know where this Rod and Gun Club is. I know the area, I just don't know where the Rod and Gun Club is. So I'm like maybe 25 minutes away from my parents' house, and I looked at it, and I'm like, wait a sec, why does that say the 19th?
Oops. Guess you're making another trip next weekend.
I am, because I would not miss that for the world. I would not miss that wedding out of that family for the world here. So it's gonna be a good time here. But we've got some news to get to over here today. A Clinton, not a staffer. I have this in the show notes as a staffer. No, this was the reporter that broke the Loretta Lynch story. Died under mysterious circumstances over the weekend, and a few people are talking about this. Not as many people as we thought. I thought it was something that was worth talking about, so we'll talk just a bit about what happened with that. The pit maneuver heard around the world was brought to light. Now, this was from last year, but this was brought to light this past week, and you had a lot to say about it. I had a lot to say about it. We've all had a lot to say about this, and I think this is worth discussing up on the show, so we'll watch the video and we'll talk a little bit about what's happened with that and what's going to happen going forward, which seems like it's going to be a lot of nothing. Almost swallowed up by the news cycle that happened towards the end of the week, but Kamala Harris made her first trip across the border to go talk to the leadership of Guatemala and Mexico, and, well, let's just say that didn't really go her way. So we'll talk a bit about what happened there and all the things that went with that. The G7 was this week, and I think that's going to be the bulk of what we talk about. The G7 happened over the weekend, and a lot of information traded hands over there. A lot of people talked about a lot of stuff, including some sort of taxation stuff and who might or might not be paying that. So we'll talk a bit about what happened with that. I've got some economic news this week, including one story that not a lot of people covered this week. It's probably maybe about 4 weeks old, but it's coming to a head right now. So we'll talk a bit about reverse repo and what that means for the Federal Reserve. Plus, the IRS chief is asking for more authority over cryptocurrency. So we'll talk just a bit about that. And some of the other big news that happened this week is that some Trump stories that we were assured were the God's honest truth back at the end of last year turned out not to be true. So we'll talk just a bit about a couple of those, including the church story. You remember that one, don't you?
The church story.
Clear out the church for the photo op?
Yeah.
Yeah, that came to light this week, so we'll talk just a bit about that. Plus, I do have a little bit of surprise stupidity for you today, because it's a week that ends with a Monday, because that's the best metaphor I can come up with, but it was a stupid one, and you're going to love this one too, so we're going to talk about all of this and more over on the Red Net Show. Thank you for joining us over in the live chat, over on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Periscope, and Facebook on both of our pages, and soon to be Odyssey, by the way, too. I'm starting to look into getting that set up, so we will have another platform for you to come and check us out over there. I have fixed the links in the description too, by the way. I did some of that a little bit earlier on today, so you can go to the proper Twitch channel. You want to go check us out over there, which is monetized. That's also news this week. I got affiliated status, which means we can start collecting payments on the Twitch channel. So if you guys do want to head on over to the Twitch side and you get a free sub on Twitch with the Amazon Prime membership. And if you want to throw it at us, I think that would be kind of cool of you. So yeah, you can find details as to how to do that, or I might make a video on that over the weekend too, because that would be every little bit helps. It's not a whole lot, but every little bit helps. So you can come check us out over there, or you can check us back on demand over on YouTube and over on BitChute.com. You can check us out on both those platforms, linked in the description below. Or lastly, check out the Freedom Scoop Media Group, where you can find great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, where I was on this morning, The Generational Gap, The Freckles and Brit Show, which is new and relaunched, by the way. I believe it's Freckles and Brit and Rachel now, so that'll be
Yes.
really cool. The R-Rated Conservative and The Breakdown with Birkenhoff. Go check out all of those shows as well. We got to get into some stuff here, because there's a bunch. There is a bunch. So let me get my lightning round tab up here. So starting off with something that happened over the weekend here. Austin police have arrested a suspect in the mass shooting on 6th Street, say another is still at large, and this got almost no play over the weekend. A little bit, I think. They talked a bit about it on Friday, and then it was just gone. Which is weird, because usually when you see an event like this, after the end of the pandemic, this is top page news. But it looks like at least 14 people were shot in a crowded street a half an hour before a bar closed. On Friday night, they arrested one suspect on the site. They still have one at large. They're still looking for one. They've given no details on who they're looking for, which is also odd to me. But also it appears that one of the victims did pass away this morning in critical care. So...
yeah, it seems like I feel like this doesn't fit the narrative of crazed gunman shoots up club or whatever, because it was, according to the police, an altercation between two specific people, and everyone else was just caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's what a lot of that came down to, and I'm almost so thinking that it might not fit the, may I say, racial narrative, because that's why they're not releasing details of who goes along with that. So I think that might play into it a little bit. I don't know if I want to go that deep into it, but I think that might play just a touch into what's going on here. But
I think it's likely more that it wasn't a mass random shooting. It was more of just
targeted.
Yeah, it was targeted between two specific people. So there was a clear motive that was not like hate of, hate of gay people or hate of black people or like anything that the left media could use to spin and say, people hate this one identity of others.
One of the other things that I thought of while we were just talking about this now is the fact that, and I just remember this, that this was also the anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting. So I do have to wonder if they didn't want that to overshadow the other side.
And I did see, I don't know if you put it in the schedule. I can't remember if I even sent it to you or not. But they did declare the Pulse nightclub site a official memorial.
I did see that. I didn't put it in the schedule, but I did see that. And yeah, I understand it fits your narrative, and it was a tragedy. It absolutely was. But a national memorial site, that seems just a touch agenda-driven or excessive. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know if it was based on like a community decision where there was a big community push to do that, in which case that's fine. I mean, that if it was a grassroots initiative and the majority of the citizens that live in that area wanted that, then that's up to them. That's their neighborhood.
Well, we will see what happens with that, and we will see what happens once they catch this other guy, if we do get some of what's going on with that. Let's talk a little bit about Charlie Kirk, because he had something to say over the weekend. And the Libertarian Party of Texas decided that they wanted to weigh in on this, and they clipped a 10-second clip out of this. I have seen the entire clip. I don't have it on the show notes because it is quite lengthy, but let's listen to what Charlie had to say, and then let's see what LP of Texas had to say with that.
And here's why. Because we live in an abundant society. We live in a place where you could have literally weed delivered to your front door. It's like, what? And somehow, oh, that's liberty. No, that's actually slavery. And here's why. Because...
So having weed delivered to your door is slavery, apparently. according to So Saith Charlie Kirk.
I think his ever-shrinking facial features have also shrunk his brain. Come see Charlie Kirk, the incredible shrinking head.
Now, I have heard the entire clip, and he was talking more about addiction when it came to drug usage as being something that enslaves people, which, I mean, if you've got something heavy like heroin, I can understand where he's coming from that, but...
Yeah, not marijuana. That's not addictive.
No, I know.
Completely non-addictive. So...
And yeah, we do have to talk about the fact that, yes, there are people who are being put in a cage for using something like that. So I do think that is more akin to slavery than
it's
that
literally just, it's literally, and this might be what reframes the arguments for closed and open borders to people, is that it's literally an arbitrary line on the map in our country of where you can and where you cannot smoke marijuana.
I don't even know why it's Schedule 1 at this point, to be completely honest.
It shouldn't be.
Except for the fact that it takes business away from the rope makers, which is the reason it's on Schedule 1 in the first place.
It's like if you live on the border of, I don't know, Colorado, and a state where, and one of the states around Colorado where it's not legal. You can literally use it in the morning, drive to your friend's house, use it again that evening, and you've committed like a serious crime.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make any sense, like at all.
Well, we will see what happens with that. I didn't think this was big enough for a main topic, but I did want to touch on this and brush over this here. But it looks like the former administration was looking in at a couple of members of Congress, including both Representatives Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell. Reading briefly from CNBC here, DOJ watchdog will probe reported Trump-era subpoenas of Apple for Democrats' data. So what happened with this, as it looks like they issued a subpoena to get data from Apple on the phones of Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff, which, by the way, Adam Schiff did the same thing to Devin Nunes at the beginning of the administration. Mm-hmm. This was under a gag order. The gag order expired this week, and Adam Schiff found out about it, probably by complete accident. And now he's all pissed about it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the Patriot Act still stands.
Exactly.
What's your take on this?
Isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, they only don't like it when it's done to them.
Right.
What did you have to say on this one?
It's typical double standards.
I kind of figured that's where you were going to go with that. And yeah, if you don't want to be spied on, then don't spy on the rest of us. Oh, yes, but we have to get a subpoena to go get your data even though we're collecting it.
Shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally. No, just stop talking. You've already defeated your own argument.
A little story out of my neck of the woods this week. This is one we've covered before with the forgivable loans for black farmers out of here. Well, a judge in Milwaukee has put a halt to that because there is no equal protection under the law. From CBS, federal judge halts loan forgiveness program for farmers of color. Federal judge has halted a loan forgiveness program for farmers of color in response to a lawsuit alleging the program discriminates against white farmers. U.S. District Judge William Griesbach in Milwaukee issued a temporary restraining order Thursday suspending the program for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported. The program, as we know, pays up to 120% of direct or guaranteed farm loan balances for Black, American Indian, Hispanic, Asian American, or Pacific Islander farmers. President Biden's administration created the loan forgiveness program as part of its $1.9 trillion COVID-19 pandemic relief plan. What's your take on this one?
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
I think it's done at this point.
Well, unless it gets appealed.
Yeah. It could go, yeah, because this is, Griesbach is district court, U.S. District Court, so I think the next step is the Supreme Court, and I would like to see where that goes and how that falls for equal protection under the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be interesting to see how a Supreme Court would rule on a case like that.
Well, it does... I think that they, especially with the makeup of it, would come down to say equal protection under the law applies off of this. And I mentioned it when I talked about this morning, as the fact of if they did the same thing with a private charity, where they started putting money, the same money even, into a private charity, and the private charity was doing the same thing, paying off up to 120% of the loans, and they tried to sue this, the judge would tell them to get fucked. Because it's a private charity, they can give to whoever they want for whatever reason that they want. But because the government's involved,
Right.
now we've got that
because
pesky
it's taxpayer money.
Mm-hmm. So, interesting way to look at this one. Did you see any of the Ilhan Omar saga this week?
No.
So
What now?
Ilhan Omar compared Israel and the U.S. to Hamas and the Taliban, according to several news outlets. It wasn't quite the way that they spun it, but she basically said that if we are going to condemn the Taliban and Hamas for atrocities against humanity, then we need to do the same thing for the U.S. And 6 Democratic representatives, who are also Jewish American, came and called her out for that. And Nancy
Why?
Pelosi initially rebuked her for it. Well, there were some other issues that went along with that. Nancy Pelosi initially rebuked her for it, but now she's taking that back as well.
I mean, she's not wrong, though.
Yeah, but you and I didn't take an oath to uphold the Constitution either. Keep that in mind. And a lot of people got pissed off about it. I actually agree with you on that one. She's not wrong. She's not.
I don't see what taking an oath to uphold the Constitution, I don't see what difference that makes.
She was calling out the U.S. constitutional structure while she was doing it.
Okay. I was thinking along the lines of, let's not bomb any more brown people in the Middle East. And because that's unconstitutional, because we have not declared war.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're still selling arms and conducting military operations by proxy in some of those countries, like Yemen.
Yeah.
So in that way, she's completely accurate.
Yeah. It does seem that the biggest problem with that was the fact that she was calling out Israel for it, and people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz did not care for that very much.
Of course they didn't.
I kind of figured you were like...
Duh.
And Rashida Tlaib got into this too and said that freedom of speech didn't exist for Muslim people in Congress. So, of course, they ran right into race for it.
Spicy.
So, yeah. And then Nancy Pelosi this morning walked back her rebuke of this, saying, "Oh, I didn't rebuke her. I just made her clarify it."
Oh, well. I mean, I do think clarification is necessary, whether you are calling out the structure of the Constitution that has allowed this situation to happen, because it hasn't effectively restrained the president from continuing to to conduct war activities where Congress hasn't voted for it.
And
so in a way, she's not wrong there either.
Right. Wow.
Because it has failed to prevent that situation, and that has been true for 60 plus years.
Well, we will see where that one goes. That was a minor story, but I figure it was worth noting on this. Speaking of updates on this here, did you see that there's an update from the Cortez family this week?
No.
AOC's aunt says blame Puerto Rico politicians, not Trump, for Abuela misery. Reading this one from Fox News. If the grandmother of U.S. Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has suffered from Puerto Rico since Hurricane Maria in 2017, then Puerto Rican politicians are to blame, not former President Trump. That's the assessment of an aunt of the New York Democrat who was interviewed in Puerto Rico by Britain's Daily Mail. Which that kind of was the thing that I was saying at the beginning, because, I mean, we've all seen the pallets of stuff that were sitting on the tarmac in Puerto Rico.
Right.
I mean, it's not like he came out and said, "No, don't send any money to them. They're lazy. I don't want to send money there." It got sent there, and then it just kind of got hidden.
Somebody dropped the ball.
Either deliberately or non-deliberately. That will be debated for years and years to come.
Right.
But it's interesting that that her aunt is like throwing her under the bus at this point, and I don't know how the family structure goes over there. I don't know how close they are, but it is interesting to see.
It does kind of seem like she was using her abuela for political purposes.
No, a politician would never do something like that.
Hmm.
I've got one that you brought to my attention this week, and for whatever reason, the webpage for this is not loading back up, the archive for this, but we can still talk a bit about it because I've still got the picture. Because Bill Clinton and James Patterson are working together. Image on the screen is the title image of a book called The President's Daughter that Clinton and Patterson are working on together. Why the hell will this not load?
I don't know if they're working on it together or if it's actually done.
They are, according to the article I read this morning from UPI, which is I archived and is not loading back up, they are close to there. They have been working on it. There's still some details to work out with it, but it is close to finished yet at this point.
Also, that is an actual picture that I took with my cell phone at my local Target store when I was there that last week. That is where that ad was.
Oh, so yeah, they're all out and everything for this. God, this won't load. God damn it. I don't know if they're just trying to reload or.
Okay, yeah, now that you say that, it must not be close to done because it didn't have a I actually didn't stop to see if there were books on the shelf so I could read the summary on the back to even see what the story, what the premise is about. The chances of Bill Clinton having actually written anything to do with this book are zero.
I
It's
guess
James Patterson plus ghostwriter.
Yeah. Yeah, from what I read for this, he was basically doing a consulting for it, and then he gets to put his name on it. Basically consulting how it all works in the presidency and how it works for, the security and everything that goes along with that, because he does have experience with that. But he did also point out, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, that Patterson knows how to sell the scene and turn the scene, and I just know how the government works.
Well, actually, I just Googled it really quickly to see when it was coming out. This is the second book that they have worked on together.
Yeah, I saw that too.
The first one was called The President is Missing, and it was released in 2018. So, and it is very much billed, the exact same way with Bill Clinton's name and then James Patterson's name on it as well. So I don't know, maybe this is a series or something?
I think it is actually because I was looking into that a little bit over the weekend too. I like that kind of book. I would actually be interested in this.
It's set to be, the new book is set to be released in June. So this month, it's done. They may just be dealing with shipping issues, which is not surprising.
I would read it. I'm not going to lie. This is the kind of book I love. I would absolutely read this book. I don't care who wrote it. It sounds good.
Don't give the Clinton family any more money.
Fair point. Giuliani is in the news this week. Exclusive new audio of a 2019 phone call reveals how Giuliani pressured Ukraine to investigate baseless Biden conspiracies. And this is from the, of course, ever so objective CNN. Never before heard audio obtained exclusively by CNN shows how former President Trump's longtime advisor, Rudolph Giuliani, relentlessly pressured and coaxed the Ukrainian government in 2019 to investigate baseless conspiracies about then-candidate Joe Biden. Which, if I'm not mistaken, he was not a candidate yet at that point. I speculated on that when I first heard about this.
When was
that? This was in 2019. If I remember correctly, the phone call happened before Biden announced that he was running.
Well, I'm sure that they had indications that he was going to run.
That's fair. But regardless, technically he's not going after a political rival. But the other thing that I thought about this when I actually sat down and thought about this is this actually might be a case of the Logan Act being violated. We might actually have a real world case of this because Giuliani is not a government official. He never has been. Well, I take that back. He has been because he was the mayor of New York City, but in the capacity of working with the Trump admin, he has never been a government official. He is a private attorney.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This might be that Logan Act smoking gun that they're looking for. We might actually have a case of somebody violating the Logan Act that's never been prosecuted in history.
Interesting.
So it looks like, yeah, he went over there to go talk to them about going and digging up dirt on Biden. I do have to wonder if this does have something to do with the political structure, not necessarily Biden as a political candidate, because he hadn't announced yet, but, like you said, they also had the indications, and people were talking about Biden running pretty much since the end of the 2016 election.
Right. Exactly.
So it's a possibility. I don't know if I would have picked him as a strong one, but regardless, that's all in
Yeah, I
hindsight
mean,
now.
major party candidates spend at least a year spinning up before they actually announce they're running for president. So there would have been a lot of things going on in the background, and there would have been super PACs and grassroots initiatives and all kinds of things that would have been going on that people in DC would have been aware of, that he was preparing to run. It would not have been a secret.
Right. So, I don't know. I really don't know what to think about that, except for the fact that this might actually be that Logan Act violation that everyone said that General Flynn did.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
I'm ready to grab some popcorn and watch it. Speaking of things that I'm ready to grab some popcorn and watch, U.S. investigators recover the majority of ransom Colonial Pipeline paid to hackers. That
Ooh.
untraceable Bitcoin that that they can't trace, they can't do anything about. Well, that shot that narrative in the ass.
So it's really not untraceable.
You and I have known that since Bitcoin started.
Exactly.
What did I say the last time we talked about this? Go try to buy a hooker with Bitcoin and see how long it takes.
But I wonder if it's untraceable if you don't share the information, or if they gave them, like, I don't know, a tracking number or some kind of something that's on the back end that only the person that owned the Bitcoin would have. Whereas it's like, if you don't share it, then yes, it remains untraceable. But if you obviously tell someone, then they could maybe see it.
Well, I'm guessing from what I read from this, it looks like there was actually a task force from the government that was specialized in going to recover Bitcoin, which once again runs back onto the idea of this is not untraceable because these transactions are on dozens and dozens of computers.
Well, and the other thing is that there have been large-scale Bitcoin thefts as well. And those people have had zero recourse for getting that money back. They don't even know who took it. So it makes sense that if there's a large theft like that, like, I mean, you were talking millions of dollars, that the government would want to step in and figure out, how to trace that money and how to, for the purposes of getting it back to the people that it was stolen from, because that is a crime, but also for their own purposes as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it was both.
Yeah. Looks like they got 63.7 Bitcoins returned. And like you said, that's millions of dollars. According to this, at the time the article was written, that was about $2.3 million. But Bitcoin has come up, so that's even more money at this point. And it's all got back here. Let's grab one from the New York Times here, a former newspaper. This is the one we missed last week. Federal judge overturns California's 32-year assault weapons ban.
Huzzah!
A federal judge in California on Friday overturned the state's 3-decade-old ban on assault, which on the Clubhouse chat, we were actually both wrong on that because it was a district court. It wasn't the Supreme Court yet, so that's next step is to the Supreme Court. But a federal judge in California on Friday overturned the state's 3-decade-old ban on assault weapons, which he called a failed experiment, prompting a sharp retort from the state's governor. California prohibited the sale of assault weapons in 1989. The law was challenged in a suit filed in 2019 against the state's attorney general by plaintiffs including James Miller, a California resident, and San Diego County Gun Owners, a political action committee. The judge, Robert T. Benitez, of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California, wrote that sections of the state's penal code that defined assault weapons and restricted their use were hereby declared unconstitutional and shall be enjoined.
Beautiful.
Well, until it gets to the Supreme Court. And then we'll see what happens there, which actually I think, once again, they're going to be kind of in favor of this and say, hey, yeah, no. Go by
The
whatever you
California
want.
Supreme Court might be, but after they do that, it'll definitely go to the Supreme Court of the United States.
I think the next stop is the Supreme Court. I think it's already been through the California Supreme Court.
You
Because
just said
this
it
was
was
a
a
federal
district.
Yeah, this is a federal district. The federal district court is above the state Supreme Court, usually, on most cases.
Okay. You might be right. I don't.
And
I'm not
I
super up on structure in that way.
and I don't see Newsom letting this go either.
Oh no, definitely not. Except he's got bigger problems. He's being
He does.
recalled.
He does have bigger problems.
He may not actually get to address this.
Speaking of California, Alyssa Milano says she's considering a run for Congress in 2024.
Heaven help us.
Actress and activist Alyssa Milano said Tuesday she's considering running for office in 2024. As reported by The Hills in the Know, Milano said that she is looking at California's 4th District to potentially run against Tom McClintock, who is a Republican. She says she splits her time between Truckee, California and Bell Canyon. And the Republicans have basically had a strong arm there in the 4th District. She said, I would love to maybe consider flipping that seat blue.
I doubt it'll happen. What district is it?
The California's 4th District, which I don't, looks like it's Truckee and Bell Canyon are both in that. And I don't know anything about either one of those cities. So.
Ooh, it's not. No, I don't think it can.
Oh, what did you find?
The Cook PVI, if you're familiar with elections, it's the partisan voting index. That's what indicates whether a district or a state or any size district, pick one, federal or state, how far it leans one way or another. So that's where we figure out where those purple districts are, which is where the PVI might be just like +1 or 2 onto Republican side or Democrat side, or it flips back and forth every few elections. That's how you get purple districts, is when it's fairly well mixed and the seat changes, party hands often. The PVI for that district is +8 on the Republican side. So it's a little bit too far outside of that zone where it's actually possible to flip the seat. Now, it wouldn't be impossible, but she would be fighting an uphill battle.
Well, I mean, she's got the power of 3, though. She'll just use that charmed magic.
I wouldn't be so sure. I don't know that her former castmates are so in love with her anymore.
Nice. Did you see that Macron got bitch-slapped this week by a constituent?
Who?
Emmanuel Macron of France.
Wow.
Let's have a look.
Don't fuck around, honestly. Like, I've seen online, I've seen memes, and they're not far off from the truth. Where it's like when the French want to protest something, they are not above lighting fires in the streets because they're just like, of course, that's how we get what we want. Duh. And Americans, up until about a year ago, were all like pearl clutching over things like that. So the fact that he got smacked by a constituent is not really a surprise to me.
Let's watch it. We can watch it. I have the video.
Okay.
Wow!
Oh! Oh!
I know your video is delayed, but you heard that.
Yeah, I did. I heard it.
Vas-y, casse-toi de là! C'est incroyable.
Hold on. Wow!
Oh!
I have to watch on my phone because I can't see it from this side.
Yeah, that was quite amazing. That was like a wind up and go, which I mean, in old French culture, a duel usually comes after that.
Right.
I challenge you to a duel. So, I mean, when are we getting 25 paces here?
I don't know. Did they outlaw dueling in France like they have here?
I have no idea. It does look like they got the guy. They said it's an isolated incident, but it's France and they don't fuck around like you said. But they got the guy. They picked him up, and yeah, he's going to answer questions. I don't know what the penalty is going to be, but yeah, just the gall of a guy to go back and bitch. I wish we could do that.
I mean, someone tried. They threw a shoe at George Bush.
Who throws a shoe? Seriously.
I don't know, but he was pretty serious.
Oh, I got another one here that you brought to my attention. Speaking of things that are stupid this week, let's listen. Is this the video? Yeah, this is the video, I think.
Well,
I
let's find
understand
out.
from what's been testified to the Forest Service and the BLM, you want very much to work on the issue of climate change. I was informed by the immediate past director of NASA that they have found that the moon's orbit is changing slightly, and so is the Earth's orbit around the sun. We know there's been significant solar flare activity. And so, is there anything that the National Forest Service or BLM can do to change the course of the moon's orbit or the Earth's orbit around the sun? Obviously, that would have profound effects on our climate.
I would have to follow up with you on that one, Mr. Gomert.
Yeah.
So, as you all heard, that was
so many people commented on that Facebook post that I made about it, oh, he was obviously being sarcastic. That did not sound like sarcasm to me.
It didn't, but one of the things that was pointed out in the article that accompanied that too is the fact that he might have almost been pointing out the frivolity of trying to alter climate change as it was, because we're at a point where this all does happen naturally, and can we even do something about it?
If that's true,
if
his delivery sucked, because I love dry humor. That was not dry humor. Like, you couldn't tell. He literally sounded as stupid as whoever that person was that thought Guam could capsize. Quest says different BLM. Yes, this is the BLM, which is Bureau of Land Management, not BLM Black Lives Matter. Obviously.
All right, I got just a couple more here. This one is coming from the Biden DOJ. The Biden DOJ updates court filing after LGBTQ advocates blast its stance in religious schools case. Reading from CNN, the Biden Justice Department Wednesday afternoon updated its court filing in a case where it's defending the right of religious schools to discriminate against LGBTQ students after backlash from critics, and a statement from plaintiffs in the case they're saying that they felt betrayed. Attorneys from the Justice Department amended their filing to stress that while they defend the law in court, the policy surrounding the federal law is being reviewed by the Department of Education. The federal law at issue, as part of Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in federally assisted education programs, but allows for a religious exemption for organizations with religious objections. So it sounds to me in this like this is coming to a head between what's in the First Amendment and what is equal protection under the law, because these schools are federally funded. Partially, at least. They're still private schools, but they are partially federally funded. And should there be a religious exemption?
This is just another one of those things where if you really want total autonomy in your district or whatever, you have to completely remove yourself from the federal system. Now, I think that they have made that impossible because the federal government is the only, or maybe it's state, but either state or federal has to give accreditation to these schools in order for like the diploma to be accepted as proof of education for college or what have you. So They do retain control of that. If you want to have total autonomy, you have to change that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we need to go with as well, is to get away from the government. The government shouldn't have any instance in some of these schools, also, except for to make sure.
Again, this is another one of those bake the cake things.
Yeah.
Why would you force a school to take your money. Private school is not cheap. Why would you want to willingly give a school who hates your child $20,000 to educate them? Like, that just seems counterproductive. If you consider them to be a hateful organization, why would you want to try to force them to let you give them money? That makes no sense. And we've had issues similar to this in Indiana. It's kind of a tale of two schools thing. One of the Catholic high schools fired, I think it was a guidance counselor or a soccer coach or something like that, because she was gay. And another school, there was a movement to fire one of their staff members that was also gay, and the school refused to do it. And they were both private schools. They were both, I believe, Catholic.
Sorry, I'm just fixing something here because I just realized that I didn't change the target on Restream, so we made a new event over on YouTube. I just found that out. All right. Anyway, that's I got one more here coming on from the beginning round here, and that is that Texas is now going to be building a border wall, according to Greg Abbott, which I just saw right before we went live that he actually is in a little bit of trouble on the other side because they're having grid failures again. But this is coming from Friday. Texas will build a border wall, Governor Abbott announces.
Okay, so whose land are you going to steal to do it?
That's a good question.
You're going to force people into eminent domain. So you're still between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Because the government never retained like an easement on either side of the border. There are people that own land that spans the border. Mm-hmm. Their land is large enough that it goes across the border. And so in some cases, in different places along the border, the same family has owned that same piece of land. It's never been split up since even before the Gadsden Purchase, which made the border go all the way across. So like, how do you take a piece of land that has been one parcel since before the border was there and tell someone, we're taking that, by the way?
I don't have the answers. I know that it's good that he's taken away from the federal government, but I don't have the answer for that. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that it's great that he's taking that away from the federal, that's taking that decision away from the federal government, because that is what should happen. But that still doesn't answer the eminent domain question.
No. And I'm sure that there's going to be a challenge somewhere. So I'm sure that we're going to catch up with this story a little bit more. I just wanted to make sure that I got touched on before we got into this here. Let's talk a little bit about Christopher Sign, shall we? Did you hear anything about this over the weekend?
No. I was very busy this weekend.
This was interesting because I got almost no context for this when I first heard about it, and then all of a sudden it's everywhere. So according to KENS5 CBS, Alabama anchor who broke the Bill Clinton Loretta Lynch tarmac story is dead at 45. Just to read a little bit more into this, journalist and Alabama television news anchor Christopher Sign, who once played football for the University of Alabama, was found dead Saturday morning after what police are investigating as an apparent suicide. AL.com reported the reporter was an anchor for ABC 3340 in Birmingham, was found after an emergency 911 call was received at 8:30 a.m. local time Saturday regarding a person down at a residence. When police and fire personnel arrived, 45-year-old Sign was found dead, according to local media. Police say the death is being investigated as a suicide. The important part of this is the fact that Sign, who grew up in Dallas, was previously a reporter and morning anchor at the ABC affiliate in Phoenix, when on June 2016 he broke the news of a secret meeting between former President Bill Clinton and then Attorney General Loretta Lynch at Sky Harbor Airport. As Deadline reported, news of the meeting created suspicions that Clinton was lobbying Lynch on behalf of his wife. So it's somebody that has at some point crossed the Clintons, because remember, that tarmac meeting, that was nothing but yoga pants and Chelsea's wedding and whatever the hell else they try to spin this for, and now he's dead.
Interesting.
No details yet at this point, but I'm sure you've got a little bit to say on this with what I've just told you so far.
I can't remember who said it on Facebook, or not Facebook. It was Twitter. Maybe you'll know. But it was someone said, I'm sure the Clintons were devastated to learn this news months ago.
Yeah, yeah. It's somebody commented on this morning's contemporary announcement too. It was Hillary Clinton sent you a suicide request.
Yikes.
But this is, I mean, realistically, this is something that you do have to pay attention to because it seems like, Arvold, I think, was the one who, no, it wasn't. It was Random Randy this morning pointed out the fact that, I asked the question, I'm like, who was the chef that was close to the Clintons that killed himself? And then he pointed out it was Anthony Bourdain. Epstein, there was that reporter that shot himself in the back of the head twice. I mean, this is a pattern. So either these people are so terrible to work with and work around that you just get immediately depressed anytime you're around the Clintons, or there's something else going on here. But this is a pattern of people who were adjacent to or close to that family. And I don't know. I think that's a little bit scary.
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong.
I mean, it just seems too coincidental that it keeps happening.
And nobody says a word about it either. I mean, what does the news say right here? It's an apparent suicide. It's no questions here. Nothing to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he left behind his wife. He's got 2 kids. And for the most part, I mean, unless there's some major thing that happened in his life somewhere, like, I don't know, his wife caught him in bed with a farm animal or something. He was about to lose everything. I don't see where this goes to other than the fact that he's connected adjacently to Bill and Hillary in a negative light.
And then there's always that phenomenon where, if you're looking for a connection, you'll always find it. Like when you go look for a certain kind of car because you want to buy one, then and you want a certain color, like you want to look for a yellow Mustang, and then all of a sudden you see yellow Mustangs everywhere. There's that as well. Like, politics is very stressful. Working in politics is extremely stressful. And if you do it long enough, I feel like you do put yourself at a higher risk of mental health issues and potentially at higher risk for committing suicide. So that might be part of it too, that all of these people that are connected with them have, committed suicide for the most part, but that has more to do with the fact that they worked in politics for so long and not necessarily that they worked with the Clintons specifically, just that they had a much more stressful career than the average person.
Yeah. And I can see that too. I mean, just even as little bit of the dip in the water that I got into a couple of years ago, where I just got the signatures and the money sponsor set up for me to go run for Senate a couple of years ago. That in itself is stressful. To just get to the initial point, the exploratory committee to run is stress. And now I would hate to see where it is once you're back into this, but it's still, I mean, this is suspicious to me, but, once again, I also heard this from Styx, who is extremely critical of the Clintons. So before I even read the article, I'd already heard a spin on it, too, so I don't know. It's suspicious. Something definitely to come back and watch, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before we take a chat break, I wanted to get to this big story, though, and this is something that initially you had brought up to my attention, and then I went down the rabbit hole and looked at this. So we're going to start by watching the video from your Twitter feed on top of it of this police chase. Now, this is from, I believe this was from July of last year. June or July of last year when this all actually happened. But let's actually have a watch for this and see what happened, and then we'll talk a bit about what's to come with this. So let me get this flipped up here.
If you happen to have not seen it yet, prepare to be very angry.
Yeah, I was when I first saw it.
July 2020, Nicole Harper was driving home on the I-67 and is alleged to have been clocked for speeding by Senior Corporal Rodney Dunn, who claims that she fled. But in the video, we see an obvious decrease in speed as Harper pulls into the right lane and activates her turn signal. She claims it was to indicate she was going to exit the interstate, as the area had a reduced shoulder, regardless of Harper's actions, and indications that she would stop. Corporal Dunn initiates a pit maneuver.
They hit the inside wall. They roll over, get me EMS started. Got the number 3 lane shut down.
So, I mean, if you're listening back into the audio platform, you missed out on a lot of video for that. But, I mean, just to look at this there's a scene I'm supposed to be going with. Even without the narration, too, which I tried to find a version of this without the narration and I couldn't. But, I mean, even without the narration, it's very clear that this vehicle slowed down. It's very clear that there was indication of, okay, well, I mean, I'm slowing down, I'm surrendering. It's very clear.
Mm-hmm. Slowing down, putting on your hazards, getting over so that you can exit to the nearest exit. There were a couple of comments in the Twitter thread of others who live in that area, basically saying that stretch of highway is like literally the middle of nowhere. It's very dark, and I don't know that someone called it like a dangerous area, but they were just like, yeah, it's very dark. And like, I wouldn't want to be pulled over in that area either because I would be in the middle of nowhere. So, yeah. Also, she was 5 months pregnant?
I think it was less than that. I think it was like 3, but still. I mean, the quantity at this point is irrelevant.
Not that he knew that, but still, It's like, you don't know that. So it's like, why would you do that when that possibility exists, like at all? That there is even a minute possibility that could be the case. Why would you do that? It's excessive.
It is.
And then there's a video of, there's a longer video on YouTube, I believe. If you go find the thread on Twitter, that is linked in the comments somewhere. He actually walks over to the vehicle and demands that she get out of it. And she has to explain to him that she cannot exit the vehicle while it is upside down because she's stuck. And he lectures her while she's still stuck in the vehicle about she needed to pull over sooner or she needed to do something differently. He actually lectures her while she is upside down in this vehicle, potentially injured. He lectures her for her actions. That is just absolutely mind-blowing to me.
No, and this actually took a really big turn too as we were looking into this as well, because this, interestingly enough, got the left all angry because it was police brutality, but it got a lot of right-wingers angry too. I mean, with the exception of my friend Sewell, who's super, super duper auth-right. He's the only person that I've talked to that's been on the police officer side. Everyone else is saying, no, this was way too much. Now, other details that came out of this came from the Newsweek article that I came with this. Given the fact that he did this and he initiated this maneuver in under 2 minutes.
It's not very long.
I can understand if you're following somebody for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes even, or even more than that. I mean, one of my favorite things to watch on TV when I was in high school still was Deadliest Police Chases. And these people are chasing these cars for an hour sometimes before they go do a pit maneuver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
they're
that's
trying to
because they
resolve.
can't get close enough to do one, because the person that they're actually chasing is actually trying to get away, meaning they speed up, they don't slow down.
Right.
She clearly slowed down. She didn't change, she changed lanes to get in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was no indication there that she was running anywhere.
No, I mean you're right on that. But just to do it in 2 minutes, whereas any other time I've ever seen this done, it's after every single other option has been exhausted. They've done spike strips. The person is still running. They've had several deputies on the chase at this point.
He never
Whereas at this
calls for
point,
backup. He never
never
calls for backup and say, meet me at the next exit or anything like potentially, she's running or whatever. I'd have to go back and actually watch the video again. I'd seen it once, but I was thinking in the video that she passes under a highway sign that might indicate that there would be an exit coming up. So it's like, if that's the case, like that's even more of a reason, like, oh, there's an exit in a mile. Let's give it another mile because she's literally in the lane that's going to turn into the exit lane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just like there's no logic applied to that at all. None.
Yeah. And that's been something. And I saw some other people that were arguing, with like Freckled Liberty was one of them. She was really big on this one, and a lot of people were arguing back with her that, I mean, it's a law that you're supposed to pull over immediately as soon as the cop turns his lights on, and
No, you're supposed to pull over when it's safe to do so.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I've even been lectured for that too. At some point, I got pulled over. Shocking, I'm sure. As much as everyone knows I'm a car guy. Shocking, I'm sure that I've been pulled over. But I pulled over, I mean, dead of the night, middle of the night, one night, I was going to my mom and dad's house, I think, down the interstate. And I got pulled over. I was driving in the left lane to begin with. But I got, he flashed his lights on. And I went over. I'm like, okay, well, it's dark out. There are trucks that travel in the other lane. So let's go over to the left lane because, my car window's on this side, and he's going to get out on this side. So I pulled over, and he wrote me a ticket for pulling over on the left side, on the left shoulder.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they will. And I've noticed even more now because I think it's standard practice at this point that most officers, if you are pulling over to the right, they will approach your car from that far
window.
side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the passenger side window. One, I think it gives them a better view into the vehicle. Two, I think it's more for safety, just so that they are not on the side of the vehicle where the cars are whizzing past, especially if you're on the interstate.
Which, I mean, if you're in a standard coupe, that's fine too, because it's really easy to reach across. But, I mean, that's a stretch to go from my driver's seat to the passenger window on my pickup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But regardless, that's not what we're arguing here. We're arguing over how much of a dickbag this cop was.
This is excessive force.
Yeah. And that's the exact term that should be used for something like this. This is excessive force. This is absolutely 100%. There's no reason for this.
He deliberately caused her injury.
Mm-hmm. Total her car. Total her car. Put her baby in danger, which once again, you don't know that there's a baby on board at that point, but still. And on an all-wheel drive car, too, on top of that, where you're going to throw the pit, and then one of those wheels is going to grab traction and give the torque steer, which is what we saw that flipped the thing over.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a little bit more car geeky than most of the audience would understand. But yeah, it's that torque steer.
No, but they're educated on that. Like, they take driving courses to learn those maneuvers, so they know how the other vehicle will behave when they do that pit maneuver. Because if that interstate had been crowded, he probably never would have executed that maneuver because it would have put other people in danger on the road. Mm-hmm. The only reason he did it was because the highway was empty.
Well, because he could.
And because he could. But I think that the likelihood of him having done that same maneuver, if it was rush hour traffic, was significantly decreased.
Yeah.
Which means he knew how to assess risk and chose to be a dumbass.
Yeah. Well, apparently the state of Arkansas is going to be on his side because, according to Newsweek here,
it's Arkansas. It's the South.
Rodney Dunn, Arkansas police officer who flipped pregnant woman's car, faces no charges.
Nope.
Reading briefly from Ewan Palmer over here, an Arkansas State police officer who flipped over a pregnant woman's vehicle using a maneuver designed to end car chases has faced no disciplinary measures for his action. Dashcam footage of the moment Nicole Harper's car was flipped over has been made public because Harper is suing the officer, Rodney Dunn. She alleges that Dunn negligently performed a pursuit intervention technique, or PIT maneuver, Fox 16 first reported. According to this, yes, she was clocked at 84 and a 70. Harper's SUV is seen slowing down, pulling over the right-hand lane. We've seen the video. We know what happened with this. But yeah, no charges.
Yep.
I hope she wins the lawsuit. I really do.
I hope she does too, because that precedent, I think, needs to be set.
Mm-hmm. And even at that point, maybe take an appeal. Maybe take that to the Arkansas Supreme Court for whatever worth that's going to be. But still, yeah, that's excessive. That did put her, the life in danger of somebody who was intending to comply. So even if you intend to comply, the state's still going to state. All right. What do we got next? I think
Let's
we should
do live
some
chat.
live chat. Yeah, let's do that. I gotta see what we got next here. Yeah, we'll do some live chat, and then we'll talk about Kamala Harris's magical trip across the border and all the fun that came with that.
That'll be a big topic. So we have some of our regulars. Quest is here. Quest jumped over to Twitch actually, so he might have been the one that pushed us over the threshold so we could get affiliate status. So thank you if you're watching us on Twitch, because that's exciting. Joseph and Henry are here from Facebook. Highleaf is on YouTube. Quest and Highleaf immediately started discussing this story that we just talked about. They discussed it before we brought it up. And Thomas said, wait, the media lies? Who knew?
Before you get too far into that, I do want to say thank you to Spartan, who donated a lemon over on DLive.
Thank you. Thomas says having pot delivered to your door equals slavery. George Orwell, possibly. Except not. Like I said, Charlie Kirk and the Incredible Shrinking Brain. Quest said, I remember when some of the 9/11 families wanted the Twin Towers site to all be a memorial, kind of antithetical when you consider how many of the people who died there worked in finance. Eric says, why is nobody covering the ouster of Bibi?
I don't even have that in there.
I don't even know what that is.
Netanyahu's ouster in Israel.
Thomas says, it's always nice to see the bond between a granddaughter and a political pawn.
Oh!
Savage. Matthew said, would Chelsea not be more appropriate to talk about the president's daughter? Yes. But Daddy wants the money. That second book deal. Actually, he probably did sign on for a series. That's usually how that goes.
Every time I see that book title too, all I think about is that crappy 90s B-TV movie from Disney, My Day with the President's Daughter.
Okay, so there were two different President's Daughter movies that came out when I was younger. One was called, I think, Chasing Liberty, and the other one, I feel like they came around the same time. One of them had Katie Holmes in it, and I think the other one had Mandy Moore in it as the president's daughter character. Yeah. So that's all that reminds me of. Thomas says it's going to be interesting to see if the left looks fondly on Netanyahu like they do G.W. Bush once the new guy makes him look like something I can't say. Because we'll get kicked off of YouTube.
Who is that? Because I actually want to see what this is now.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
curious.
we can look at it later. Quest said, remember the Clintons wanted privacy for Chelsea back when they came to the White House. Yeah, well, she was a teenager then. That's totally different. She's an adult now. Quest says the president is missing. My money is on him being at Epstein's Island. Something tells me that is not the direction that the book is going to take. Matthew says if they charge Rudy with the Logan Act violation, then there are other people who are in violation as well. Don't disagree there.
No.
Quest says, I wonder if we spent $5 million of public resources to recover the funds. He means the Bitcoin ransom. Quest said, I love his wording in the opinion, often called a decision. Thomas says she might get the power of 3 votes. Excellent. That was good. Oh, he said, what did the 5 fingers say to the face? Exactly. Spartan says, I demand we change the Earth's orbit so my solar panels get 23 hours of sun. Quest questioned which BLM it was and then said he wanted a BLT. Quest said all of the federal funding goes to administration to check that you're following their guidelines. I know he's talking about schools now. Mm-hmm. That was a point Larry Sharp pointed out and suggested it would do nothing negative to outcomes to reject federal funds. So I totally agree. Thomas says extreme force and extreme farce.
Yeah.
About the story from Arkansas.
Ron
says that cops should be put to death. The precedent to be set is for the cop to be executed. I can't tell if he's actually being serious or not.
He is being serious because he said the same thing Thursday morning in Contemporary.
Interesting. Okay. Glenn says, is there happy news? I don't think we really do that here.
I had some happy news this morning. Did you? This actually from your neck of the woods too. That girl from Carmel that was missing they found her.
Oh, I hadn't seen that yet.
Oh, I don't have it in the schedule because it was all recovered. But yeah, there was a 17-year-old missing from Carmel that came up on Friday, and yeah, they found her.
Good.
So that's happy news.
Happy news. We always like finding lost children.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
Yeah, because I was about to make an Epstein joke, and that probably shouldn't be said on air.
Let's talk about Kamala's farce.
So this past week, Vice President Kamala Harris made her first trip in an attempt to try to smooth over the border crisis, which they are now admitting is a crisis at this point. So Kamala Harris got on Air Force Two, and we covered a little bit of this last week where the plane had problems, and she had to go turn back and then take on another Air Force Two to go to Guatemala. She spent a couple days this week talking to the Guatemalan president about what to do about the border crisis and how to do so. And then she went to go talk to the Mexican president as well to see what they could do to stop curbing the immigration. Now, it's interesting to note that, this went absolutely nowhere, which, you had to expect this from those two. But both Obrador and I can't think of the Guatemalan guy's name right off the top of my head. But both politicians were quite angry with the U.S. given the fact that they're losing their constituency to the U.S. Their constituency, their taxpayers, the people that are going off this. But, for the most part, this really just went nowhere. What have you seen on this one so far? I know we talked about the speech, and I've got the video of that, but...
Right. Well, my comments were mostly about her comments, not necessarily the trip generally, but the fact that she actually took an overtly illegal immigration stance, which I don't think a lot of progressive Democrats were thinking that they would do. I think they were thinking that they would just say, basically the border is open, we'll figure it out when you get here, kind of a thing. And they
Is
haven't
that where
done
you want to
that.
start? Is her speech here? Because I've got that here.
Yeah,
You want to
sure.
listen
Let's
to
go
that?
ahead and play it.
And I want to emphasize that the goal of our work is to help Guatemalans find hope at home. At the same time, I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border. There are legal methods by which migration can and should occur. But we, as one of our priorities, will discourage illegal migration. And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. So let's discourage our friends, our neighbors, our family members from embarking on what is otherwise an extremely dangerous journey, where in large part the only people who benefit are coyotes.
Yeah, that's pretty well where that goes, and I mean that's 180 from what we were promised on the campaign trail.
Exactly. So I think Thomas noticed it too, because he said, is it just me or does VP Harris sound very sad when telling illegal immigrants not to come? I feel like she had a hard time saying that sentence. Like she dragged it out and like, I could tell she did not want to say it.
No, of course, because I mean, inadvertently she's admitting defeat at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And honestly, there's some political chatter, and I had you watch a Sticks video before the show here, which you said you were, with all the busyness that you had throughout the day, you were having a little bit of trouble taking out of this. But Sticks was speculating that it could be any politician, but the title of the video was that Jill Biden threw Kamala under the bus on the border crisis. That she nominated her specifically to go down and be the border czar because it was out of control, and there was no way to go back and recover it at this point, which leads her to the speech that we just listened to.
Which as well as I do, that's going to make her immigration promises when she runs for president that much harder to defend, because again, she's going to continue that flip-flopper reputation that she has for, cannabis, for criminal justice, for all these things that she's already known to be a flip-flopper on. Mm-hmm. Add immigration to the list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know that it was necessarily Jill, even though, I mean, she's got an extra grind with Kamala because we've already talked about the fact that Jill is pissed about what happened at the first debate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which rightfully she should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then to go on and say, oh, Joe, why don't you just put her on the border here and then, watch her flail in the wind.
Right.
Which I'm highly entertained by.
Yes, indeed. But there's also that precedent that the VP is not the one who makes policy. It's the president. They're the president that sets the agenda for the policies that are going to be made. So it's fairly easy for Kamala, I think, to tell progressive Democrats later on, like, look, Joe is a moderate. You got a moderate immigration policy, period. If you don't want a moderate immigration policy, then put a progressive at the top of the ticket, aka me, kind of thing.
AKA me. Well, and it's interesting enough, too, because, I mean, of course, Cortez had to get involved in this particular situation. Just briefly from the New York Post here, AOC blasts Kamala Harris for telling illegal immigrants not to come. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is blasting Vice President Kamala Harris for telling illegal immigrants not to come to the U.S. amid a record surge in illegal border crossings, calling the Veep's comments disappointing. Ocasio-Cortez offered the rebuke in a series of tweets Monday evening, retweeting a video of the vice president discouraging illegal immigration during her trip to Guatemala. And yeah, we just listened to the speech, and I mean, you knew that she was going to be the one that get involved in this. You knew that was going to be. You knew that was coming,
Right.
because that's been a thing that Cortez has been up on, is getting that border wide open. And why are we seeing these border facilities? I mean, with a comment like this, could we see a repeat of the white suit, the white $7,000 suit, crying at the empty parking lot? I feel like we could see a repeat of that.
Probably.
And it's interesting to have this discussion with you, because you and I do have very different stances on the border as well. But we can come back and agree on the fact that if you're going to flip-flop, regardless, I mean, neither one of us has flip-flopped on our positions. You are very open borders, I am not. But we've been consistent with it. But we can still agree that with Harris going back and forth on this, she's not making an ally of either of us.
I'm not pro free-for-all, though. That's the difference.
Well, with that being said, I think you and I are a little bit closer than maybe I would have initially thought then, too. Because I'm not pro shut it down and don't bring anybody in.
Yeah, I'll never support that at all.
Yeah.
But I also don't support
And neither will I.
the border wall either.
But regardless, I mean, with Harris making a comment like that and flip-flopping, she's not making an ally out of either of us. Because she might just change her mind the next day or make a promise for her campaign.
We're also not the people that she needs or wants to convince either.
Right.
Because she's not liberty friendly at all. Not even a little.
I found this picture here from her trip to Guatemala, because when Harris was received in Guatemala, there were some interesting protests that came out there, along with this sign here, which I thought was photoshopped at first, but I can follow the wrinkle in the sign and say, no, this was genuine here. This sign here that says, Kamala, Trump won.
Ooh. Yikes.
There were other signs along the protest of Kamala, mind your own business, and Kamala, go home. But that was the one that stuck in everybody's mind. So the Guatemalan people were not happy to have her there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was actually kind of a little bit hilarious.
It does make me wonder how the foreign press in South America frames those visits to the citizens. That would make them have that reaction.
Well, also considering one of the other signs says Kamala, stop funding criminals. I didn't have that one up there. But the interesting part of that is the fact that, I mean, they were promised. I don't know how they were promised by the media, but I know from our media they were promised that, it was going to be an open situation and people could come back and they could come reside in the U.S. And now she's coming back there and saying, we don't want you here anymore because we can't handle the volume and this is a crisis now.
Mm-hmm.
And these kids that are making this journey are in a facility that's still 700% full.
Right. No, it's all around a bad situation. She's trying to mitigate risk, but that's only a short-term solution.
Right. So essentially, this went absolutely nowhere. She still has not gone to the border, by the way.
Shockingly enough.
Because they don't want to take the attention away from the kids. I got a couple other immigration notations that I wanted to make here. A couple other stories that popped up. Not as big as the Guatemala trip, but the Supreme Court had an opinion that they weighed in on this week. Against immigrants in temporary status seeking green cards. So reading briefly from CNN here, Supreme Court rules against immigrants in temporary status. So what this looked like is the Supreme Court on Monday held that the government can block non-citizens who are in the U.S. under a program that temporarily protects them from deportation in certain situations from applying for a green card if they enter the country unlawfully. Justice Elaine Kagan wrote for a unanimous court. So this was a 9-0 decision that, yes, they can deny green cards to people who cross the border illegally. What was interesting about this decision was the fact that the courts basically came out with this and said that Congress needs to do it if they need to change something. That the Supreme Court's not going to do it for Congress is essentially what I got out of the decision.
I don't think you're wrong.
Yeah, especially coming from a 9-0 court like that. Like, we're not going to make the law. You go and do your job. The case concerns Jose Sanchez and Sonia Gonzalez, a New Jersey couple who came to the U.S. illegally in 1997 and 1998 and now have 4 children. Their youngest was born in the U.S. and is a citizen. Following a series of earthquakes in El Salvador in 2001, they applied for and received temporary protected status, which shields foreign nationals present in the U.S. from removal if they have been subjected to armed conflicts or environmental disasters in their homelands. In 2014, the couple sought to apply to adjust their status to become lawful permanent residents and apply for a green card. Kagan said there was no dispute that Sanchez entered the U.S. unlawfully without inspection. She said that a straightforward application of immigration law supports the government's decision to deny him status as a lawful permanent resident because he was not lawfully admitted. So basically, yeah, they're coming out and saying, okay, Congress, if you want this changed, do something about it, because we're not going to do it for you. The government said that while Congress had made some individuals eligible to adjust their status if they met certain criteria and had a sponsor, it was not available to those who had not made a lawful entry. Huston said the government had reasonably determined that Congress did not establish TPS as a special pathway to permanent residence for non-citizens who were already barred from that privilege because of a pre-TPS conduct. So, right decision, I think.
I think so.
One more here, and this is probably not as happy of a news here. More than 21 children separated at border have not been reunified, Biden task force says. More than 2,100 children separated at the border by Trump administration's zero tolerance program have not yet been reunified with their parents, according to the task force working to reunite the families. In a 22-page progress report submitted to President Biden last week, the task force indicated that 2,127 children are awaiting their reunions. Only 7 children have been rejoined their families since Biden took office in January.
Holy crap.
A senior DHS official in a call with reporters blamed numerous errors and misinformation in data kept by the Trump administration for the cumbersome reunification process. So, what do you have to say?
That I wonder if it's due to difficulties with the foreign governments because the parents are still located in the other countries and maybe they're having trouble finding them or verifying who they actually belong to. I don't know. That's my question. Is this actually the fault of the U.S. somehow, or is this the U.S. is trying to work with all these foreign governments to get these kids returned and they're having trouble locating the parents or verifying paperwork or whatever, because the foreign governments aren't as meticulous with their records, perhaps.
Well, and I also have to wonder just a little bit if some of this doesn't have to do with the fact that maybe these kids were trafficked by coyotes after all. And then, okay, they dropped the kids off, they got separated, and then they ditched to go back and find more kids to traffic. I have to wonder if that's a possibility as well.
And not only that, but that their parents don't necessarily want them to come back because they want them in the U.S. Mm-hmm. They might rather these kids be adopted to American parents and stay rather than come home and, potentially put their families back into financial, I don't want to say financial ruin, but like they would go back to having a very limited potential for life, like for being prosperous in their lives and under difficult economic conditions. So maybe their parents are just like, yeah, that's my kid. No, I don't want it back. But not because they don't love them, but because they know that adopting them out here is likely a better outcome for their child long term than it is having them back.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Because I think about it from the perspective of, if you're living in some backwater town in Bolivia or Colombia and your town is overrun with drug lords and violence, why would you want to bring your 7-year-old home?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that they might be victimized, they might be kidnapped, they might, have harm come to them. And also your economic prospects in that area are near zero. You can't make a living. Or your family is being completely oppressed by a drug lord. Why would you want to have your young child come back to that?
No, and I understand that as well, but I mean, this lends credence to the argument that the right wing, the super border hawks, always made throughout the last week, that, oh well, I mean, the parents aren't coming back out here because they're not getting separated from the parents and this and that and that. Which I kind of knew that too, coming back up the border. It wasn't the parents that were bringing them up here. These kids were unaccompanied, legitimately unaccompanied.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that the kids were being torn from their mother's arms, crying.
I mean, there's certainly
There
a
was some of
percentage that does happen,
Yeah.
but like I'm saying, of that over 2,100, how much of that is due to just crappy record keeping from localities down in South America where they just can't find the parents because they just don't have proper documentation from these kids? And think about it. They're asking these kids things like, what's your address? Like maybe they're too young. They don't know that information. And so they're having trouble figuring out, who these kids actually belong to, because the children are too young to communicate. I lived in this town. This is my house. I don't know. These are my parents' names. Like, these are my parents' first names. Stuff like that. Like, it could be a lot of different situations that apply. I'd just like to see the breakdown of the percentages of this situation versus this situation versus this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it might be legitimate, some of it may not.
All right. Well, we are up against the clock right now. We got to talk about G7, and that's, I think, going to be the important part of this. So this past weekend, we saw the G7 summit, where leaders from 7 nations got together to discuss what they are going to do economically going forward. Now, Boris Johnson was quite thrilled about the fact that we're going to have diplomacy again around the world, and we have an actual U.S. president. But some of the things that we saw over the weekend make me start to believe that maybe Mr. Johnson was a little bit more out there because he wanted to go laugh at Joe Biden. But Joe Biden tried very hard to take center stage from this, and he failed miserably. But I want to start before we get into some of the Biden gaffes, because there were many, as we all know that there were going to be, and just talk about some of the policy that came out of this. Now, one of the big policy ideas, and I know you have been paying attention to this, is the fact that there's a proposal of a 15% global corporate tax. Now, what this means is that for the most part, nations around the world can't adjust their tax rates to compete with each other to get their various businesses. But there seem to be some exceptions to this as well. Some of this having to do with food, some of this having to do with agriculture, the types of products and the types of medicine that are being produced, but also the nations. It looks like China may be exempt from this 15% global tax rate. You pointed this out to me, so what have you seen on this?
Well, everybody loves cheap goods from China. You give them a 15% minimum corporate tax rate, then suddenly everybody's paying more for all their plastic products and cheap crap that they normally get from China. Instead of paying $5, you're going to pay $20. Yeah. It's not going to be that big of an increase. I'm just giving an example.
No, I understand entirely. But, I mean, one of the first questions I had to this is, how does this get enforced, and what happens to the nations that don't want to participate? Because there are going to be some, i.e. China, that don't want to participate in this because they want to siphon all the global business away from everybody else. They want to be the economic powerhouse, and
they want to undercut everyone else. They want to be able to continue providing those cheap products. to people. And this is what happens when you get into trade wars. And suddenly tariffs aren't enough.
Yeah.
Now you're looking at a 15% minimum corporate tax rate. And people think that that's going to somehow like prevent business from fleeing the United States. It's not. You're just going to go to China.
Well, I mean, it's China's. Iraq's not going to participate in that shit.
No.
Iraq is going to look at this and say, fuck you. We're
They
going to
don't
come and
care.
make. Yeah. Iran.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that the majority of China is really, really rural. So how do you enforce that?
Exactly. And the other end of that's going on with this, I mean, China is a huge country. It is. But they're also
land-wise,
making.
its land area is just insane.
They're also making massive inroads into the biggest continent on the planet. And do you think that they're going to pay the corporate tax rate to manufacture cheap shit in Africa?
Absolutely not.
This does nothing but hurt the G7 countries.
It does. It's true.
But they're all excited for this, and then they're going to do other stuff. One of the other big
It's
ones
just going to continue to contribute to hyperinflation because the cost of goods is going to keep rising.
Yeah. Where's the other one here that I really wanted to push on you here because I thought this was going to be fun. Not the tax rate. I know about the tax rate. We just talked about that. And the exceptions to the rule. Oh, I didn't put it up on the schedule. Oh, yeah, there it is. It's the top Reuters article that I have archived in there is that the G7 has also agreed to end new government support for coal power by the end of 2021. So they're not even trying to do a scale down at this point. They're doing this right fucking now.
Yeah.
Which, from what I understand, breaks another campaign promise from the Biden administration. You know, he wasn't going to shut down all these fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I pointed out Pennsylvania, but I was corrected in the live chat this morning that fracking was Pennsylvania's big thing. But that's still a big thing in Pennsylvania is the coal. Plus various other states along the south. And, I mean, it's still going to happen, but it's all going to be privately funded, which it's going to be separated from the government. And all these other new green techs are going to be the ones that are going to be subsidized. So a lot of these businesses are not going to be able to stand up. And
no, it's gonna make them more expensive because everything, and not because they're not competitive on their own. It's going to be expensive by default because every other industry is getting a subsidy where this one is not. So the government is arbitrarily and artificially lowering the prices of green energy to kill fossil fuel industry, which is going to end up making the whole thing implode and collapse on itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, not to mention the fact that they still need the coal to make the windmills, but also they're talking about doing this by the end of 2021. What happens on this side of the Mason-Dixon line at the end of a year, any given year?
A shit ton of fireworks?
No, it gets cold.
Oh, well, yeah, it also gets cold.
It gets damn cold.
Yes, it does. So we're going to have more rolling blackouts and more energy issues. It's going to be like Texas all over again, times 20.
Then, I mean, not a lot of people are heating their homes with coal, but they're using electricity to run their blowers.
Yeah.
It's usually oil or natural gas that they're heating their home with, but they're using electricity to run the blowers. Sometimes they have an electric heater. Yeah, there's so many other sides of this that go along with the fact that we're going to try to run this on green energy. Plus the hours of sunlight, if we're going to do this by solar power. I think green energy is really cool. I really do.
It is. But this is another example of the government manipulating the free market to do its bidding, to meet a certain deadline, because that's how they want it, that's how they promised it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, without regard for the natural process of innovation and scaling and all of these other things. If you scale it too big and nobody's using it, you're in trouble, because those companies aren't going to be able to support your interest payments that they're going to have to make because they took out all these loans to start these businesses.
Mm-hmm.
It's just stupid.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I think green energy is cool, but we're not there technologically yet. We haven't found a way to harness enough solar power.
No, and we keep entering into all of these like climate accord agreements and all this bullshit, but yet countries like China and India, who are vastly outpacing our production of harmful, gases that are going into the atmosphere, and they're just given this free pass.
Yeah. So there was that. Biden also got his regular gaffes in at the G7, which I thought was going to be good. Now, there were other situations and other things that happened. Of course, they're promising to donate 1 billion vaccines around the world. But I do have some video here that I think that we would do well to watch as well, including I've got this one here where the president confuses Syria with Libya, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Let's listen.
Where we could work together with Russia. For example, in Libya, we should be opening up the passes to be able to go through and provide food assistance and vital assistance to a population that's in real trouble. I think I'm going to try very much hard to. It is, and by the way, there's places where I shouldn't be starting off and negotiating in public here, but let me say it this way. Russia has engaged in activities which we believe are contrary to international norms, but they have also bitten off some real problems they're going to have trouble chewing on. And for example, the rebuilding of Syria, of Libya, they're there. And as long as they're there without the ability to bring about some order in the region, and you can't do that very well without providing for the basic economic needs of people. So I'm hopeful that we can find an accommodation where we can save the lives of people for example, in Libya,
Yeah, there's that. That's the guy that has the nuclear codes.
I don't know that they actually let him have them.
I hope not. I
didn't trust Donald Trump with them. I definitely don't trust Joe Biden with them. Although Joe Biden is far less trigger happy, I feel like. He'd be a lot more likely to just like use the nuclear codes as his debit pin accidentally or something like that.
This was the one that got me, and then there was another one where he just kind of got lost in the crowd. But this one was the one that got me, where he's just out of the blue, in a very whispering voice, like, 120 days, give me a break, man, I need time. Let's listen.
With your when you're having these conversations with European allies who are very concerned about these sanctions, how do you justify that? And what are your plans?
120 days. Give me a break. Need time. Thanks.
When you're having
he needs a vacation.
He needs to retire.
He needs a retirement home.
Yes. Then there was, the fact that he called out Boris Johnson for not introducing South Africa's delegate. Seconds after he introduced South Africa's delegate. Let's just do that one too, because that one was short and dumb and fucking hilarious too.
To welcome those who have just joined us, bringing some pretty spectacular weather with them, Prime Minister Modi, President Ramaphosa, President Moon, in just a minute. And the President of South Africa. And the President of South Africa, as I said earlier. Oh, you did? I certainly did. But you get to mention twice. So I'll go over that again. Let me tell you, we're delighted. Mr. President, I'm glad to say We're joined by Prime Minister Modi of India, who's on the
Let's
line.
go.
I'll give Boris that. He can think on his feet at least. Not very well, but he can do it. But this bizarre one here, Joe Biden seems to get lost at the G7 summit in England. Jill comes to the rescue. Let's have a look at what that looked like.
How are your meetings going in Cornwall, Mr. President?
I beg your pardon?
How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well.
Come on.
Nice evening. They always do.
At what point do we admit that the president isn't in control of his mental faculties?
It seemed like it was nap time.
Tapioca pudding in nap time?
Pretty much.
This is the leaders of supposedly the 7 most powerful nations in this country, all coming together to decide how we are going to exist with each other. And I'm a little scared.
Right? Exactly.
Does this instill you with a lot of confidence right here?
0. No confidence. The only confidence I have is that Joe Biden is not actually calling the shots.
Yeah, there's that. I will give you and cede that to you. I do want to talk a bit before we head out of here about something that is not being talked about at all. And I don't know if you looked over some of this or not, but I'm going to read here from WTVB for just a second. Fed reverse repo volume sparks worries U.S. short-term rates could go below 0. This is syndicated for WTVB. Financial institutions flush with cash have flocked to the Federal Reserve's reverse repurchase facility, loaning the U.S. central bank money at 0% interest and raising concerns that the bond market that key short-term interest rates could actually fall below 0. Volume at the Fed's overnight reverse repo window surged to $433 billion on Tuesday, according to New York Fed data. Analysts said this was the 3rd largest uptake ever, the biggest being just $474.6 billion on December 31st of 2015. A little over 2 months ago, around mid-March, there was 0 reverse repo activity. Scott Skirm, Executive Vice President in Fixed Income and Repo at Curvature Securities, said the fact that volumes are this huge in a non-month end and a non-quarter end period tells me this is a distortion in the market.
Obviously.
Big picture, this suggests to me that quantitative easing is done and the Fed needs to taper or reduce its purchase of the U.S. Treasuries and other debt assets. The market is grappling with a surfeit of cash in the system, mainly from Fed asset purchases, and the U.S. Treasury's financial support to the economy in response to the coronavirus pandemic. That has pressured front-end interest rates, with some overnight repo rates periodically turning negative this year. On Monday, the overnight repo rate fell to negative 0.1%, the lowest since late March, but recovered on Tuesday to 0.2%. So it looks like, and I mean, I just learned what this was like a few days ago. So I'm by no means an expert in this, but it looks like the Fed is buying back money to try and taper off some of the inflation because they just had a 5% inflation month after a 4.2% inflation month.
Well, yeah, because they keep printing money. Eventually, you have to buy some of it back. Otherwise, you go into hyperinflation.
We're there.
Yeah, I mean, we're like right there.
I mean, it's not going into hyperinflation. We are there. 5% in a month after 4.2% is that's hyperinflation. That's exactly what that is. But the fact that got me was that nobody was reporting on this. Like, this went completely unnoticed.
They don't want to admit that there's anything wrong. They don't want to admit that last year closing down half the country was a mistake. They don't want to admit that the Fed arbitrarily just printing money hand over fist is bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's trust the government. They're here to help. It's bullshit.
Well, those are scary words. I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Exactly.
Yeah, those are terrifying.
The Native Americans, how that worked out for them.
But this is big. This is big news. This is really big and something that we can see. And I mean, IBD this morning was talking about, you know, people going out and getting into bonds right now because the U.S. wants people to go out and buy bonds. I wouldn't go anywhere near a bond right now. And this is not official financial advice. Always check with your financial advisor as to what's best for you. This is not legal for legal terms. This is not official financial advice, but still, I wouldn't go anywhere near a bond right now for at least another 3 or 4 years.
You couldn't pay me to invest in the federal government at this point. Ever.
Well, technically, if you buy a bond, that's what you're doing. That's
exactly. The worst investment you could make is an investment in the government.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, right now I wouldn't go anywhere near stocks either, but it's also not, for legal purposes, official financial advice. But even with the S&P rising the way that it is, it's on a, especially with something like this, where they're buying back cash to make sure that things stay at least in the scope of reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because if it goes too far off the rails, I mean, we're already seeing massive labor shortages, product shortages. It's not going well. It's a great time to get a job if you want one, but be prepared to negotiate a higher pay immediately because the value of the dollar is going to drop.
Mm-hmm. And it's there. It's done. And I mean, we're seeing Bitcoin go back up too, which that was partially because Elon came out and said that as long as the Bitcoin is mined with green energy, we will take it for your Tesla.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which I think that had more to do with the fact that they filled pre-orders when you could buy a Tesla with Bitcoin that they haven't been filled yet, and now a $60,000 Bitcoin is worth a lot less at $39,000. So I think they're doing something to try to artificially inflate those numbers back up. But regardless, when your crypto is jumping like that, and the price of milk is going up, because there's so much flush money with this. And I mean, these MMT kids over on Twitter too, they think they have all the answers. I mean, the inflation is just temporary. That's what we keep hearing. The inflation is just temporary. When has inflation ever been temporary?
No, I mean, it always goes back to some kind of equilibrium, but it's never as low as it was before the inflation.
Right.
It always sets a new low, which is higher than the last one. And then it just stair steps up and up until it becomes completely untenable and the currency and economy completely collapses.
All right. I got just a couple more that I want to make sure that we get through before the end of the show here. One of the big ones that happened this week as far as domestic policy goes is the fact that the talks on the Biden infrastructure plan are over. Biden walked away from the table with, I believe it was Shelley Caputo is the woman who was negotiating with him. Mm-hmm. But they have officially announced the end of the infrastructure talks. They've reached an impasse. So the only way that they're going to get the infrastructure bill passed is if they use their last budget reconciliation on it. And I actually don't know if they're prepared to do that just yet because they don't get another one.
Mm-mm. No, I don't think they're going to do that. Not this early.
But the Senate themselves came out, and they came out with a tentative infrastructure bill of their own without the president's agenda. Reading here from the New York Post, senators announced tentative deal on infrastructure bill framework. A bipartisan group of 10 senators announced Thursday that they had reached an agreement on the framework of a proposed infrastructure package that could be worth as much as $1.2 trillion. In a statement, the group of 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats described the proposal as a realistic compromise framework to modernize our nation's infrastructure and energy technologies. This investment would fully be paid for and not include tax increases, the statement continued. We are discussing our approach with our respective colleagues and the White House and remain optimistic that this can lay the groundwork to garner broad support from both parties and meet America's infrastructure needs. This group is led by Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema. The remaining 7 members are Mitt Romney, Rob Portman, John Tester, Susan Collins, Mark Warner, Lisa Murkowski, and Jeannie Shaheen. So a mixed bag of people, some of whom I've never heard of before and some of whom I have. But some interesting people nonetheless. I mean, there's no real hard righters in this. I mean, there's really no hard lefters in it either, from what I can tell. Do you think this has a possibility of getting past the president's desk? Without knowing what's in it, of course, because we do need to actually read it, but
Maybe. It depends on I think what's in it.
yeah. I mean, childcare is infrastructure. Education is infrastructure. We can drop this one. We'll skip the Bitcoin thing because we know the government's going to government and they want to tax you for everything, including what you get off of your Bitcoin purchases. I want to touch on these narratives that have gone away over the past few weeks. Just a couple different ones. Reading here from WBKN out of Youngstown, Ohio. Cleveland Clinic has said that COVID-19 survivors show lasting immunity against the virus and do not need to be vaccinated, which is a definite narrative shift over what we've been hearing over the last year. The Cleveland Clinic recently studied the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccination among people who caught the virus and who haven't. The study finds that anyone who previously tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 infection did not get additional benefits from the vaccine, which suggests the vaccine should be prioritized to people who haven't gotten the infection. Which means
Who have gotten the infection or have not?
The vaccine should be prioritized to people who have not gotten the infection.
Okay.
Which,
well,
I mean,
had it, so.
All of us who already knew this from basic biology in high school are vindicated.
Mm-hmm.
Once you got it, you usually can't get it again, at least not for a little while. So that was interesting to come back out and see. The Senate report came out with new details about security failures ahead of the January 6th attack, but it omits Trump's role, so CNN was a little bit pissed off about this one. A new Senate report reveals previously unknown details about the stunning security breakdowns ahead of the January 6th Capitol attack, including a finding that the U.S. Capitol Police's main intelligence unit was aware of a potential for violence beforehand, which so was the rest of America.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard people brag about the fact that if they didn't get their way, they were going to go down and do this. I knew this was coming. You knew this was coming.
Yep.
Bacteria on Mars with a long enough fucking telescope knew this was coming. I don't know why the government didn't. Unless they didn't want to. I'm going to skip this one on the Sedition Hunters because it was just Bloomberg fucking fluff. Oh, here's an entertaining one for you. Let me find the picture that goes with this. There it is. So this one is actually more recent. This isn't from the end of Trump's presidency like all the rest of them were, but this one is a bit more recent. From the USA Today. Fact check. Donald Trump wore pants properly. Images and video show. So image on your screen at this point shows the wrinkled pants with no zipper that apparently was circulating around the internet for a couple days. And I don't know what caused those wrinkles on the front of his pants. I have no idea. But most people were looking at this and speculating that he wore his pants backwards, which I don't understand. I mean, I've been wearing pants for 36 years. I don't know how you button them when they're backwards. I'm sure there's a way. I don't know. But the USA Today has fact-checked this, and yes, the claim is that Trump was wearing his pants backwards during his speech, and the fact-check says Trump did not wear his pants backwards.
Again, why does this even matter? Like, I don't care.
Okay, I will give you one that you might care about then. Just one. So this came to me via Meet the Press. Breaking Interior Department IG report says police clear protesters from DC's Lafayette Park over fencing installation, not for Trump photo op. Ken Dillanyan of NBC reports a narrative we thought we knew is not the reality. So apparently,
shocking.
When you remember the incident where he went for a photo op so he could hold the Bible in front of a church. Apparently they cleared that before, and then he just took advantage of it. Like they were already planning on doing that.
I mean, it sounds exactly like something he would do, is take advantage of some kind of opportunity like that.
But remember, the narrative is that he ordered the clearing of them specifically so he could go and do this.
Yes.
And that doesn't appear to be the case anymore. It appears that instead they went out to clear this because they wanted to put more...
In the Rose Garden, police
Go away, autoplay. Fuck off. It appears that they wanted to clear that so they could put an additional fencing area up there because the violence was getting closer to the White House and they wanted to ensure the security of the president and all the members of Congress. So they cleared them out with, and it wasn't tear gas either, according to the reports. It was a smoke canister, but still, that's going to leave a hell of a burn in your eyes.
Yes.
But they did that so they could put more fencing out, and then the Donald and all of his orange goodness came out and said, all right, I'm going to walk across to this church here that got burned down last night and show solidarity with the church. So
he doesn't care about religion. Everything for him is a prop. It either serves his purposes or it doesn't.
I can't argue against that. I have no argument for that. The most interesting thing about this one, this is the reason I wanted to make sure this one got brought up in this, was the fact that it wasn't Fox, it wasn't Breitbart, it wasn't the Daily Wire that first reported this. It was Meet the Press from NBC, and the leftists that worship at the mainstream media still didn't believe it. That was one of the big arguments that came on Twitter when this first came out, was the fact that, I still don't believe it. I know that he went out there just to get a photo op and he forced the National Guard to clear those people. Well, Chuck Todd is telling you differently, and you guys usually worship him. Now, yeah, I mean, if it came from the Blaze or the Daily Wire, I could see their doubt. I really could. But this is coming from their people.
I'm not surprised. They'll eat their own when it serves their purposes.
Mm-hmm. All right. And in the same vein, I do have one little bit of surprise stupidity for you. And I don't think you've heard about this one, but I thought this was dumber than shit, especially going into a little bit of real estate like I am. This just tripped my trigger. I wanted to see what you thought about this one here. So I'm going to read from the Daily Wire for you. And I'm going to put the webpage up because I can. LA Times columnist who likened Trump supporters to terrorists wants real estate listings to show gun ownership in the area. On Tuesday, an opinion columnist for the LA Times, who seems to have hostility towards gun and contempt for Trump voters, offered a novel suggestion for people wishing to buy or rent a place to live. Make real estate listings delineate the prevalence of gun ownership in a 50-mile radius around the listed home.
50 miles?
50 miles.
That's larger than the entire island of Manhattan. What good would that do?
Virginia Heffernan tweeted, real estate listings should include the prevalence of gun ownership in a 50-mile radius and a number of annual mass shootings in the region. Time to change what a bad neighborhood is. And introduce a meaningful tax on guns and gun violence, she continued. No one should say this is a great place to raise kids about neighborhoods where even one person has an assault rifle. The metric would be simple, she posited. Example, Staten Island, population 474,000, has 4 times the gun ownership per capita of the Bronx, population 1.4 million. If that reads as safe or more, I think she says safer or more freer is what that meant to say to some people. Staten Island is for them. If not, maybe time for the Bronx. Takes race-class politics out of the real estate equation.
It doesn't account for people who are going to commit crimes, who don't give a shit if they own a gun legally or not.
Exactly.
How does that help? It does nothing.
Exactly.
And 50 miles is way too big of a net anyway, especially in urban areas.
Even in rural areas. I mean, the gun ownership in 50 miles of redacted where I live, I mean, that's bigger than the city.
Right, exactly.
50 miles, that's clear the hell to the Illinois line.
Most people don't cover that amount of distance in a day. I mean, they might drive 15, 20 miles to work and back, so they drive 40 miles, but it's to a fixed point and then back to their home. So that doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
when the radius is that large. But like I said, if you're talking about, she gives a specific example of, Staten Island. How small is Staten Island versus the Bronx?
Yeah.
But you're talking about 50-mile radius? That's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
So the statistics and the parameters that she wants to use would be utterly useless.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, it's an invasion of privacy, and it's unconstitutional.
And what I'm looking at this too is the fact that maybe she wants to do what the government can't do, and that's make the registry. The registry that the government can't make.
Good luck. But if it's a private entity making a registry, then that means you can opt out of it very easily. So again, that means that your parameters are totally screwed up because there will be people who just won't give you the information. They'll be like, no, I wouldn't. I'd be like, hell no, you're not sticking me on a list.
Well, I like the last line too. If not, maybe time for the Bronx to take race, class, politics out of the real estate equation. Now, this is coming right now from somebody who is taking real estate classes. And one of the examples my teacher gave in one of the first lessons when we were talking, and you heard me complain about when we were going about fair housing. But one of the examples we gave is that, what do we do if somebody comes up to the office and says, hey, can you go find me a nice home in a nice Jewish neighborhood? Well, that's actually against the law, and I can't do that. I can't do that legally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have to come to you and say, I want to live in X neighborhood, or I would prefer this neighborhood. They can't say, oh, I want you to find me something, blah, blah, blah. They have to come to you with the information.
Mm-hmm. With that information. Now, they can find me other information, but, and that's what the teacher in the lesson said, too. It's like, okay, well, if you want the nice Jewish neighborhood, then you've got to do your own research for that. I can't do that legally because that's discrimination. Right.
Yeah,
on the basis of
the client has to tell you where they want to look for a home.
Yeah, but that's
it doesn't
the same
really
thing.
matter the reasons why. They could just say some kind of. They could just make something up. They could just say, I want to live in a neighborhood where there aren't any Airbnb zoning restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which, once again, you would probably have to do your own research on that as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah, there's that. Thank you, Virginia Heffernan, for giving us that little bit of information. And with that, that's all I have.
All right.
What do our friends have to say?
Oh, goodness, I gotta scroll back to where we left off.
I do too, actually. I've also got to find our outro music because I had to restart immediately before we started the show, which meant that program got closed.
Saint finally joined us.
Wow, we got it way back.
I know.
But there's some entertaining stuff in there.
Okay. I found it. Tom says the closest VP Harris has been to the border was making a Taco Bell run in the early 90s. Amazing.
For Willie Brown.
Wes says laws are racist. Some of them are. Oh, and then we talked about how Kamala sounded sad. Quest is speculating that she is upset that she didn't get an invite to the G7 trip. He said, admitting defeat. That's well put. Ben says, Biden distancing himself from the border with the crazy cat lady in charge was genius. Might be wrong, said Floridians love flip-flops. That's not the same kind of flip-flop.
Mm-hmm.
Ben says it'd be nice if more Swiss bikini models would immigrate. I know. If AOC gets her way, John Kerry will no longer be the most inept person ever in foreign policy. Quest says no border wall needed. You can climb over those. Even helps you see the federales coming. Now drones.
That sounds like a Bush idea.
Yes. I think it was. Ben says, Kamala, your pizza has pineapples on it. I like
pineapple on pizza. Jinx,
Thank
you owe me
you.
a Coke.
Might be wrong, says, in my childhood, I was promised hoverboards and Robocops. Adulthood has been disappointing. Yeah. Ben says, has Biden sniffed the unreunited children yet? Ouch. Thomas says, easy solution to the migrant children problem. Send them to live on Martha's Vineyard.
There you go.
Yeah. Ed says, the groupthink 7, bunch of ass grabbers.
I like that.
Not him says, just more taxes, just what I wanted for Christmas. Thomas says, American foreign and economic policy on China has been a disaster since the late 80s, early 90s, and we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Agreed. Quest says China is being excluded because they're not being consulted. I mean, they should be. They're one of the biggest, they're a large contributor to the global economy. Not him says, I'm pretty sure a European country tried all green energy and decided it was a terrible idea.
I think you are
Probably
correct.
because they completely subsidized it and it ended up being way too expensive. Because it wasn't allowed to compete on the open market to drive the prices down. Ed said, government picking winners and losers? How strange. That never happens. Ben is on fire. He said I should change my last name to Gossi so I could be Ben Gossi. Spelled Ghassi.
Yeah, I saw it.
I know, I was reading it off for the people on Facebook who can't see all the other comments.
Oh, they can't
Thomas
see everyone else's?
No. Thomas says Biden has a Nerf football he thinks is the nuclear football.
It's probably safer that way.
Probably. Thomas says, wait, Biden's been in office most of my life, but he needs more time to figure out how things work. Legit question. I would love the answer to that. Thomas says to you, people who think Biden's doing a great job, he just got schooled by Boris Johnson. I don't think there's anyone in here who thinks he's doing a great job.
I think only the massive partisans who love the fact that he has a D after his name think he's doing a good job.
Quest says, somehow from him interrupting Boris Johnson, I imagine Biden is that know-it-all in college classes when he wasn't busy plagiarizing.
Burn.
Sure, the world is on fire, the government is inept, and the economy is tanking, but hey, no mean tweets.
That's a win.
Ben says, I have the greatest confidence in the Biden administration. Well, not really, but if I don't say it, literally no one else will. Thomas says he is investing in a bond and his first name is James. Ben and Thomas should just both be on YouTube or Facebook together so that they can make these jokes.
Yeah.
It's a great back and forth. Maybe you guys should do a podcast. Not him says, I feel like everyone in Congress is Dr. Evil. $100 billion. Yeah, probably. Not him says, holy crap, gun ownership in the area would just show a giant red dot here. Ben says, yes, I live within 50 miles of Baltimore. Ron says it's invasive and an invasion of privacy. Yes. Ben says, but guns are bad, okay? David Hogg said so, and he's a Harvard student with his own pillow company.
Oh, he doesn't have his own pillow company anymore. He stepped away from that.
Oh, of course he did. Because he figured he would actually have to do work. Not him says, I'd like to find this place that doesn't have a gun within 50 miles. I don't think it is.
I don't want to find this place.
The scary numbers more scary. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Then I need this program because it is time for us to go. So, thanks everybody who came by and chatted with us in the live chat and hung out with us, kept us on point and honest with the news. Because, yeah, there was quite a bit of that. We did get through just about all of it. We had to skip a couple things, but it was there. We will be, well, let me rephrase that. I'll be back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, for more contemporary and more news. So come back and hang out with me there. You can find links to all of those platforms in the description, so come and hang out. We would love to come back and see you, especially over the Twitch side now that we're monetized here. So let's come back and do a little bit of that here. Otherwise, Elaine and I will be back here next week for more of the Red Ned Show because, well, the news isn't going to stop and they're going to keep doing stupid stuff. So we got to go back and continue to cover all the stupid stuff they're doing. So come back and hang out with us again. That is at 5:30 Central Time, 6:30 Eastern Time. If you prefer, come back and hang out with us. Otherwise, we're going to head out of here for the day. Thank you, everybody, once again. And remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Elaine, lead them out with some last words.
Don't do anything I wouldn't do twice, and have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Take care.